Elite Facts presents
6 horrifying places you do not want to visit.
6.
Pickens County Courthouse, Alabama. Courthouses are scary in general. I mean, who doesn't like being on the jury when a killer is going to trial? However, the Pickens County Courthouse in Carrollton is scary for a completely different reason. This courthouse in Alabama is famous for a ghostly image that can be seen in one of its windows. The image is said to be the face of Henry Wells, who, as legend has it, was falsely accused of burning down the town's previous courthouse and lynched on a stormy night in 1878. The image in the window is pretty easy to see, although it is more face-like from some angles than from others. It's said that the image is only visible from outside the courthouse. From inside the pane appears to be a normal pane of glass. Since this photo was taken, the city of Carrollton has installed on the exterior of the courthouse a reflective highway sign with an arrow pointing to the pane where the image appears. There are permanent binoculars installed across the street from the window for people who wish to get a closer look.
5.
Mark Twain's house, Hartford, Connecticut. From 1874 to 1891, Samuel Clemens, his wife Livy, and their 3 girls lived in this Hartford, Connecticut home. Clemens completed The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and many of his other successful works while living here. Sadly, this was also where his daughter Susie died from meningitis. The rest of the family, living abroad at the time, never returned to the house after her tragic death. As for Susie, reports say that her spirit still haunts the property. Reserve a spot on the Graveyard Shift Ghost Tour and listen to tales of the sightings.
4.
St. Augustine Lighthouse, Florida. So usually you don't look at lighthouses and think, that place might be haunted. I don't know why, but lighthouses aren't really that threatening, if you ask us. However, the background behind this lighthouse is enough to make us change our mind. The lighthouse in St. Augustine, Florida, was built in the 1600s by Spanish settlers. By 1824, it was an official U.S. lighthouse and was later replaced by the current lighthouse located about a quarter-mile away. The original suffered a tragedy when Mr. Andrew, the lighthouse keeper, fell to his death while painting the tower. When the lighthouse was being built, there was a dispute over property, and one of the parties involved, Dr. Ballard, is now rumored to haunt the place, along with the ghost of poor Mr. Andrew. It's also been reported that 3 girls drowned when the handcart they were playing in fell off the tramway, and now their spirits roam the grounds. The group of lost souls doesn't end there, however. When the keeper's house was being rented out for apartments, many tenants reported strange noises and seeing a young girl walking around the house. In the 1950s, a housekeeper looking after the grounds refused to stay in the house overnight, trading his living quarters to a Coast Guardsman stationed on site. It has also been reported by different sources that there's the mysterious man in blue who haunts the basement, and employees of a gift shop located in the house attributed objects being moved and noises being made to local poltergeist Andrew. The tower itself is also the home to many lost souls, as it is rife with footsteps and disembodied voices. Be wary when you visit this lighthouse. Maybe you could be the next soul to be lost.
3.
London Highgate Cemetery. I mean, we are talking about a cemetery here, so obviously it belongs on this list. However, it's not just the setting that places it on this list. The history behind this location dates back to Victorian times. This cemetery was the place to be when you reached your expiration date. This necropolis was highly fashionable during the Victorian era, but sadly, since then, it has crumbled and deteriorated from neglect. The cemetery became a creepy, desolate place, complete with dead trees and twisting ivy. Since its abandonment, many stories cropped up during this creepy and dark time in the cemetery's history. Perhaps this is due to the fact that unsavory and unnatural characters love places like this. Many ghosts and apparitions call this burial ground home, along with a vampire, a man in a top hat, a cloaked figure with a gray, haggard old woman. If you're in this abandoned area at just the right time, you may be lucky enough to hear the bells ringing in the disused chapel. Thankfully, an organization known as the Friends of Highgate Cemetery is making progress with repairs and restoration of the historic location.
2.
Willard Museum, New York. Much like the London Highgate Cemetery, the Willard Asylum for the Chronic Insane is on this list for pretty obvious reasons. It's a freaking abandoned insane asylum. What else do we really need to say about the location of this? Well, we can at least delve into the background of this broken down location. The Willard Asylum for the Chronic Insane was built in 1869 and closed in 1895. This asylum at its peak was able to house up to 4,000 patients. During its 126 years of operating, more than half of the 50,000 patients who called Willard Asylum their home died within its walls. This makes the asylum's morgue one of the creepiest places we can imagine. By its closure, most patients were eventually integrated back into society, but in the early days, people didn't leave unless it was in a box.
1,
Monte Cristo Homestead, South Wales, Australia. How many times are we going to keep saying Australia is scary? Lovely country with some amazing sights to see, but god damn it if everything there isn't out to kill you. Whether it's spiders, sharks, jellyfish, whatever the case may be, it's definitely a scary place. Well, it turns out that nature isn't the only thing that wants you dead. The year 1885 saw the construction of the house by Mr. Christopher William Crawley. The house remained occupied by the family until 1948 and stood vacant until 1963. It's now a museum and tourist attraction where visitors can stop in to witness one of the mansion's 7 alleged spirits. It has been reported that Mrs. Crawley herself roams the chapel where she spent many hours of her life after Mr. Crawley died. A woman in period clothing calls the veranda home, and it's believed that she's the maid who was unfortunate enough to fall to her death from the balcony. If you look at pictures of this set of stairs, you'll be quick to notice that there's discoloration from where her bloodstains were bleached off. At least 3 deaths are associated with the second story alone. 2 of these deaths include Mr. Crawley's fatal blood poisoning and a woman who died during childbirth. The place is lousy with disembodied footsteps stomping around on hardwood floors, which is made eerier by the fact that the entire house is now carpeted. It has also been reported that objects move by themselves, and faces are seen peering through second-story windows with no balcony or supports outside. Again, Australia, could you tone it down a bit? Another story involves a young stable boy who was asleep in his quarters in the stable and was too ill to get up for work one day. His boss didn't believe him, and in an act of harsh stupidity to see if the boy was lying, he foolishly set fire to the boy's bed to rouse him from his illness. Turns out the boy was telling the truth and was burnt to a crisp. Another story revolves around a mentally challenged man who was kept shackled for 40 years until he was found curled up near his mother's dead body and was sent away to an insane asylum. Now, although all of the previously mentioned were from the 19th century, there is a story from the 20th century that is definitely worth mentioning. In 1961, a young man, inspired by the recently released movie Psycho, murdered one of the caretakers living on the grounds and carved "Die Jack, Ha Ha" into the door. The inscription remains to this day.
Don't forget to like us and subscribe for more Elite Facts.